We may not think of it very often, but images that look best to us usually have some amount of black and some amount of white. If we don't have black and white for reference, it just seems a little bit off to us. We can use adjustment layers in Photoshop to make blacks black and whites white. Let's work with an adjustment layer to modify the tonal values of our image without permanently altering the original. Sometimes when we first look at an image, it's hard to tell that it could be better or that there's anything wrong with it. Sometimes it's not until we play with it a little bit that we go, yeah, you know what? That made a good change. When we look at this flower, it initially looks okay, but we want to make it a little more dramatic, give it some pop. So we're going to use the Adjustments panel to do that. I want to make sure that nothing is selected because I want to make the adjustment to the entire image. Then we'll move up to the Window menu and choose Adjustments. When the Adjustments panel opens, of course, there are a lot of things that we could choose. We specifically want to work with the lights, the darks, and the midtones. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my Levels Adjustment layer. This is going to show a histogram. If you're not familiar with the histogram, it basically designates black to the left, white to the right, and the midtones falling somewhere in the middle. If you want to talk about theory, there should be a nice bell curve here, but often there isn't. And we can see that we actually have these wonderful high peaks in the middle with not a whole lot happening on either end. Let's see what we can do to adjust this very simply by using the sliders at the bottom. The slider on the left is going to adjust the blacks. And I'm going to do kind of some dramatic things just so you can see the difference. As I move this slider to the right, we can see that the blacks are becoming blacker. Now if I move it all the way over, we can get kind of crazy with it and get rid of the background as a whole. That actually might be the look that you want. It depends, and you can do anything you want. Generally what you want to do is to try to find where the histogram actually starts. Now I do have some blacks that are close to the left, but I want to make a little bit of an adjustment, so I'm going to drag it into where that first peak kind of starts. This is simply going to darken up the background to make attention be drawn to the flower itself. On the right-hand side, we can do the same thing with the whites. If I drag it all the way in, then we get a dramatic effect, which we don't want to do. We just want to come pretty much to the end of where the peak starts to come up. Now this already looks like a much richer image, and sometimes it's only the blacks and whites that you need to deal with. But there's also a slider for the midtones. If I drag this all the way to the left, we can see that we tend to lighten up that background, and if we drag it more to the right, we're darkening things. This actually could be a very dramatic effect that we want for this flower. But again, in our case, we're trying to keep it on the natural side. So we're probably going to put that right about where it was to begin with. Maybe a little bit on the darker side for the background. And we'll end up with something like this. When I first learned about histograms, it was amazing because the whole world opened up and you understand really how you can adjust your images using these very simple sliders that otherwise could have been very difficult corrections with any of the other tools. By using the Adjustments panel, we can make these kinds of adjustments in Photoshop with very little effort and wonderful